Honorable Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may I ask that we all rise and remain standing for our national and AU anthems, please. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Good evening. Welcome to Nedbank Namibia Sky Garden in Windhoek. My name is Gernot de Klerk. I'm the Head of Marketing and Communications at Nedbank Namibia. It's my distinct honor to facilitate at least the early part of our program. With your kind permission, please do allow me a moment just to acknowledge our most eminent guests this evening. And even as I say that, in just over 15 years at Nedbank Namibia, I need to enter this personal anecdote as a statement of fact. This is, in immeasurable terms, the most distinguished audience I have ever addressed. The moment is not lost on me. May I thus recognize the presence of the Honorable Speaker, Professor Peter Kashavivi, our Minister of Finance, Honorable Ipumbu Shiimi, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Mr. Johan, the Governor of the Bank of Namibia, members of Nedbank Namibia's Board of Directors, our Managing Director, Ms. Martha Murorwa, members of the Executive Committee. I will single out our Executive Corporate and Investment Banking, Mr. Mbuende, and our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Johan van Graan, as they are both on the dais later this evening. Mr. James Mnyupe, the Presidential Economic Advisor, Mr. Malcolm Husselmann, Senior Portfolio Manager at 91 Asset Management, Mr. Johan Nel, Partner at PwC. I realized that I need for me to coin another phrase, or a phrase at least other than titans of industry, to accurately nuance the eminent business leadership in whose company we're fortunate to be basking this evening. But just for tonight, please do allow me the collective address as titans of industry. My esteemed Nedbank Namibia colleagues, our dear friends from the Fourth Estate, the media fraternity, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I assure you that I share the pleasure of welcoming you with close to 500 other Nedbankers to this marvel of a building. Your presence is a source of joy. I was going to rave about our new campus, but then the presence of my former colleagues in the media fraternity has reminded me of the very first lesson that I was taught as a television broadcaster. A picture speaks 1,000 words. So I will let all of the wonderful images do their own talking. I will host the first session of our two-part program this evening before handing over to Mr. Mnyupe for the after-dinner panel discussion. I'm aware that this has undoubtedly been a very busy day for every member of our esteemed audience, churning the gears of our economy, so I will try do short shrift, I should say, of the formalities. In a veritable lineup of extraordinary speakers, of experts, of change makers, game changers, may I yield the podium to our Managing Director, Ms. Martha Murorwa, for the welcoming address. Martha, please.
Good evening, titans of the industry. Before I start, I must just relay something to you. Sometimes you are wondering why are we sitting up here, not even seeing our competitors. If you don't see them, it's actually better because then you can plan on yourself and not focus on the competitors. That's our next door neighbors. Let me stand by the protocol already observed, but allow me to single out the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Prof. Peter Kachevivi, and he was supposed to be accompanied by his lovely wife, Mrs. Jane Kachevivi, but instead she assigned the younger generation to accompany the Speaker. Minister of Finance, Honorable Ipumbu Shiimi, the Governor of Bank of Namibia, Mr. Johan, Presidential Economic Affairs, Mr. James Mnyupe. I actually said my language will not allow it, so I will maybe call him James Bond. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, Nedbank Namibia Board of Directors and Executive Leadership, Captains of Industry, Nedbank Namibia colleagues, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Allow me to start with a quote. The more we increase the active participation and partnership with young people, the better we serve them. And the more we comprehensively work with them as service partners, the more we increase our public value to the entire community. The quote by Carmen Martinez speaks so well to the Namibian national budget, which was recently presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Shiimi, under the theme, Reimagining a Better Future for Youth. Honorable Minister, in your budget speech, you emphasized that the 2022 national budget is a response to some of the primary issues affecting the youth of Namibia. Through this, our government has demonstrated their commitment to reposition public spending in line with youth demographics. Allow me once again to congratulate our Minister of Finance, as well as the government of the Republic of Namibia, because according to the 2022 Namibian national budget, they have prioritized sizable portion towards the Namibian youth. These include, but not limited to, the Development Bank of Namibia will provide loans to the tune of 72 million to benefit youth-owned businesses. DBN also introduced a mentorship and coaching program which aims to benefit initiatives aimed at assisting qualified and skilled young professionals, of which a total of 11.2 million has been disbursed to youth entrepreneurs. The finalization of informal economic framework, which will ensure the enabling of supportive framework for mainstreaming incentives and establish viable business infrastructure for startups and SMEs. The Green Constellation facility targeting youth entrepreneurs will be launched by the Environmental Investment Fund to provide financing of up to 2 million to initiatives that integrate low carbon and climate adaptation instruments. These are but just a few of the wide-ranging government initiatives targeting at the youth, which will be highlighted during the discussion tonight. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, Nedbank also understands the importance of economically including as well as empowering the youth of Namibia. You will remember last year, we launched the Nedbank Young Professionals campaign, which provides young professionals with convenient banking, expert advice on savings, managing their finances, financing their dreams to ensure their growth, as well as adding value to their lives through benefit that matters to them. The marketing campaign did not only star young talented Namibians, but it also was created by young team, up and coming Namibian creatives. And I was hoping, Gernot, to play the video so that you can see what Namibians are capable of. Nedbank also, as an employer, also empowers the youth. I'm proud to mention that at Nedbank Namibia, 49% of our staff are below the age of 35, which shows a progressive workforce infused with youthful dynamism. Our annual bursary program ensures that talented young Namibians are provided with the opportunity to further their studies in fields which are required to build the banking sector. Your Excellencies, we cannot discount the challenges posed by the pandemic, which remains an immediate and real threat to our future. There can be no doubt that we must continue to face these challenges together, and therefore we need to take strong and decisive action. Government has a complex assignment, and the Speaker is sitting here. It's not an easy task that they are faced. You preside over the country's finances, but in a way you are also the head of the house who sets the pace of our development. However, the private sector has a principal duty to work alongside government in order for us to accomplish our common goal of rebuilding our economy. Honorable Minister, Your Excellencies, we recognize that the commitment of the government to spur growth is not limited to budget alone. And we know that without our support, budget alone cannot do all the job. Therefore, as Nedbank Namibia, we wish to reaffirm our position to support the work of your esteemed office in national efforts at large. We visited last week Lutrets in the Keetmanshoop towns, and almost it sounded like we are government where we are saying, we have the capital, bring bankable proposals so that we can together grow Namibia. Now more than ever, it is vital that we collectively secure Namibia's future by securing our economy and the jobs it supports. For its part, Nedbank Namibia strives to do this by investing in local infrastructure, development and corporate social responsibilities, providing inclusive banking solutions, creating employment for Namibian citizens, and paying tax to the government. That's something that banks do very well. Ladies and gentlemen, Master of Ceremonies, permit me to reiterate my gratitude towards everyone in attendance, most notably the Minister of Finance. As Gernot said, it's really, when he accepted our invitation, I'm like, sure, God is really working here. He looks at these smaller children and says, I need to support them. So thanks, Honorable Minister. The Speaker of National Assembly, as well as the Governor of the Bank of Namibia. Before I close, I would like to call on all the captains of industry present tonight. Our country requires our commitment to ensure that the collective wisdom imparted tonight marks an ongoing process rather than a once-off approach. Remember, the more we share, the more we all get to understand what kind of public-private collaboration we can work on to support our Namibia. As substantive representative of the corporate sector, I'm sure you will agree with me that we need a coordinated effort to give effect to the vision and theme of our national budget to create a better future for our youth. May we take advantage of this opportunity not only to have a robust conversation, but also to join forces to co-create, support, and most importantly, act for a better tomorrow for all. From Nedbank Namibia's perspective, we wish to see a national framework to record all the significant investments being made by both private sector, public sector in advancing the emancipation of our youth. Only when we understand the full and complete picture, we will be able to target our collective investment in all the right places. You have Nedbank Namibia's full support in this regard, and in the weeks to come, I hope to engage all the key decision makers within our sphere to influence to bring this to a reality. I already know, and I can count on your support as well, the titans of industry. With that said, I wish you a great evening ahead, and thank you for coming in the big numbers that I see today. I'm deeply humbled. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha, for always the words of wisdom. Now, great plaudits followed on the tabling of the 2022 national budget on 24 February under the theme Re-imaging a Better Future for Our Youth. And I reckon we're all exceptionally fortunate to hear the first-hand insight. So, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, our Minister of Finance, Mr. Ipumbu Shiimi.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies. Okay, I'm not as tall as Gernot. Thank you very much, Mr. de Klerk, for inviting me. And let me observe the protocol that has already been established by the Director of Ceremony. But let me welcome to the banking fraternity, because I used to be part of this family. So I can welcome the speaker to the banking fraternity. Speaker. Now, the person who took over from me, of course, the governor is also here, so I think he's here to give his children support, so I'm happy to see him here. And great thanks and appreciation to the leadership of Nedbank, Ms. Murorwa and her team, and your board members. Thanks for inviting us. So I was actually asking myself, Namibians like speeches and talks. I have already presented the budget statement in Parliament. So in fact, when I was coming here, I thought I could maybe give you some synopsis of the budget, because some of you may have, missed the presentation of the budget. But then I changed my mind when I saw the speaker, because I said, I'm going to be in trouble here. So if I go through the budget statement again, he will say, do you have a second Parliament? So I may be kicked out of Parliament. So please bear with me if I don't say much about the budget. So in fact, I have come to listen. I have come to to answer questions. But be that as it may, I believe we have all seen the budget, and I think the budget statement, and I believe you all have different points of views that we can debate and discuss tonight. Really, what informs that budget is the economic context globally, and the economic context in Namibia. And globally, as we have seen, 2020, 2021, the global economy was significantly disrupted by COVID. And of course, Namibia is not an exception. Namibia was already in a weak spot. You may remember in 2016, 2015, in fact 2016, I remember the oil price crashed to about $28 a barrel. And we have not seen it at that level for quite a considerable period of time. So that was not only the US dollar. It came from about 109 US dollar a barrel to 28 US dollar a barrel. So it was not only the oil price, it was actually all the commodities actually fell significantly. You know that Namibia is a commodity producer. With commodity prices falling significantly like that, it also meant that, revenue that Namibia generates, exports revenue that Namibia generates, tax revenue that Namibia generates from exports also fell significantly. And of course, we also knew that, of course, when revenue declines significantly, government also had to withdraw from the economy, so to speak, because it had to reduce expenditure. Otherwise, it would not be able to pay its bills. And some of you are lenders to government, and you already started raising concerns that debt is rising quite significantly, and therefore government will have to reduce its uptake of debt. So government withdrew, and now government accounts for about 20% of GDP. Now, when you see government withdrawing, it also has a significant impact on GDP. But I think for the right reason, government will have to withdraw, because if you cannot finance some of those expenditure, you will have to focus on your priorities. So that's a context in which COVID found us. Now, COVID is a very strange thing. Of course, the economy declined. If you had fiscal space, of course, that's the time that you want to spend. But we didn't have this fiscal space. As I said already, the revenue was already on the decline. So, well, we responded by spending more on the health sector. We spent a bit more on social safety nets. You probably, many of you still remember the emergency income grant, because people were significantly affected by mobility restrictions, especially in the informal sector. At the beginning, when we started, we closed up everything and said, go home. But we forgot that these people actually derive their livelihoods from these activities. And therefore, if you tell them to go home, it means they have no bread on the table. So that's why we had to give them some kind of income for a short period of time to be able to survive while the economy is opening up. Fortunately, slowly things are changing. I'm trying to paint the picture of 2020, 2021. The global economy has rebounded. It grew by more than 5% in 2021. That's a projection. That is of course about to be confirmed, because the year is, the year has come to an end, and therefore those estimates will now be confirmed. So that is slowly changing the picture in terms of the global economy. But of course, there are still problems there. We are aware of the fact that there are supply chain disruptions. COVID disrupted everything, including supply of goods and services, and that's creating pressure on prices of goods and services. And I think that has become the governor's headache now. That's why we saw him increasing interest rate, because he's now worried about inflation going up. Of course, because of these supply constraints that we are facing. But maybe that's a better problem to manage than when there's actually no demand for goods and services, and therefore economies will not be able to grow because there's no demand. Now the demand has picked up, supply is constrained, but over time supply will probably adjust. Of course, what we're seeing in the global economy is also what we're slowly starting to see in Namibia. We are projecting that this coming year, already in 2021, we may see a smaller increase in our economic activity in terms of measured by GDP. Going forward, we believe that things will improve in a better way. So our growth numbers are in the region of about 2.9%, close to 3%. Of course, these are still estimates, these are still forecasts. And if anybody tells you that I know what the economy is going to behave in the next 6 months, that person, you must tell them to go away, because they are not telling you the truth. So, but these are our best informed estimates, that things are starting to look better. But of course, provided that we manage COVID better, and I think all of us who are working very, very hard to make sure that we get our people vaccinated. I heard some rumors that Nedbank had a clinic here. I'm not sure how the vaccination clinic is going, so I wanted to come and test it. But well done to Nedbank. I think that's definitely something that we need to applaud them for. So managing COVID, I think that will definitely help the economy to recover. That will definitely help us to gain from the benefits that are coming from the global economy. So that's really the context in which the budget was prepared. But it's also prepared in a context where our revenue is extremely constrained, especially for the next financial year. Why? Because you know that about 30% of government revenue is SACCO revenue. We started the pandemic with 21 billion. Next year we are at our lowest, we are at 14 billion. So you have lost about 7 billion of revenue. Expenditure doesn't go down. We still have to pay salaries. We still have to pay to buy pharmaceuticals for our hospitals, but your revenue has gone down. So you now have to balance things, in the context of that revenue constraint. So what we have seen in the budget book is that expenditure for the next financial year remains very, very muted because revenue is also muted. For the next financial year, we have kept expenditure, we have adjusted slightly with inflation, but we also believe that revenue is going to respond of course, with the economy improving, revenue will respond. We also believe that SACCO revenue is also going to respond positively, looking at the import figures for this, the customs union, because that's where we really get our revenue from, or a significant part of our revenue from. Some will argue that, if you look at the budget estimates, revenue is underestimated, especially beyond 2022, 2023. Governor has already given me a hard time saying your revenue is underestimated, so please adjust your revenue. We want to play it a bit safe, so he could have a point, and those who are saying the revenue is underestimated, you could have a point, but probably in the midterm we will look at those figures again and see whether the projections that we have that we could get more revenue, especially from SACCO, will materialize, and then we can adjust the figure. So for now, we want to play it safe. We'll keep the expenditure muted. We'll keep the revenue on the conservative side. If revenue really improves, I think we are all going to be positively surprised, and we are all going to happy and celebrate. Because I will no longer hear Malcolm complaining about too much debt, and he doesn't want to buy government debt, and because debt is becoming unsustainable. So we're expecting revenue to improve as well. Of course, we cannot continue to cut expenditure up to the bone, because when you do that, it also means you are constraining services that government renders, because government renders important services. Hospitals, roads have to be built, important public goods have to be built, and I think we have cut to the bone. So the strategy now, that's the gear in which we are shifting now, is really for all of us to work together to grow the economy. And I think that should be the conversation that should preoccupy us as Namibians. How do we grow the economy? In the budget statement, I think we have tried to demonstrate what government is trying to do together with the private sector. I'm sure you have read what is in the budget statement, but suffice to say, one of the things that is keeping us very busy, and I should tell you that when I have been in public service for quite a long time, but I have not seen a situation where I see the governor of the central bank almost every week. When I was at the central bank, probably 2 months will pass without me seeing the Minister of Finance. But here, I see him every week, because we have platforms which are looking at how best we grow the economy. James here, he speaks to me almost every day. So I think even sometimes my family is complaining that you are speaking to James too much. Even on Sundays, I have to speak to James. The point I'm trying to make is that we are all trying to work together to try and shape the growth agenda. I'm sure you're doing the same from your side. I think what is important is for all of us to work in unison to grow the economy, because that's really what we have to do. That's the biggest agenda that we have to pursue. Because if we do that, we are all going to benefit. You will get more clients as bankers. Those that are in fund management, you will get more savings that will come into your funds, because we are generating resources. We have also started to ask ourselves a question, is that we can no longer rely on old engines of growth, because these engines of growth have actually dried up. Of course, we are a commodity-driven country, and commodities are going to be there for quite a considerable period of time, and you'll probably discover more. And we are happy to see that commodity prices have actually started improving. And of course, Namibia having that record of a stable investment destination, especially when it comes to the extractive sectors, I think we are starting to see the benefits. We are already starting to see more investments going into commodities. But we know that commodities do not create massive employment. Extractive industries do not create massive employment. They create good revenue for government. They create good foreign exchange for bankers. But our youth will still be telling us that we need more jobs. Because, with diamond, for instance, I just have a big ship with maybe 50 people on that ship, and I can produce a lot of diamond from the sea. So very capital intensive doesn't create the necessary jobs. But we need them, because they are creating the income that we need for other social services that of course we have to render as government. So we now have started asking ourselves, how do we diversify the economy in such a way that it creates the necessary jobs that we need to create? We have learned a number of things. We are working with a growth lab. I'm sure you have heard us talking about it, the Harvard Growth Lab. And we have learned a number of things during this exercise, doing what is called the country diagnostic. Identifying what are the binding constraints that preventing the economy from diversifying into other products. We have learned that countries that have diversified successfully are those, first of all, they rely and build on the know-how they have, because you don't jump to a far tree, you jump to the nearest tree. That's one. Countries that have successfully diversified are countries that are producing complex products, not only basic products, complex products, so that, because with complex products, you get a higher margin. Those that are in business, you get a higher margin. If you are in commodities, if you are producing something which everybody is producing, your margin is very small. But if you are producing something more complex, you can actually have a better margin. And that way you improve the wealth of the nation, you improve the income of the nation, and therefore that will trickle down. So that's another lesson that we have had, that we have learned. The third lesson is that these products have to be, you don't just produce one commodity or one single product. You diversify, you produce as many as possible. So what does this exercise lead us to? It led us to identifying a number of products from a list of about 1,200 products that we have looked at, where we think Namibia can have a competitive advantage. We have split them into different phases. Like, if you have to start, these are the ones. Phase number 1, 25, phase number 2, phase number 3. So where are we with that? We have now started working with those industries that have been identified. One industry, for instance, that we started with in December last year is what is called the high-value fruit industry. The grapes, the dates, And again, to come to select that industry, it was a huge debate. Of course, it's part of the pool, but we had to debate whether that's the one that we should start with. And the reason why we decided with that is that, first of all, it's not very controversial, so it can actually, we can bring few people together and start learning. And what are we discovering? We're discovering that development is actually not an easy process. It's a trial, fail basis. When you bring all those people together, when you bring the Minister of Agriculture together, when you bring those people that are in the high-value fruit sector, you start to understand what are the binding constraints. For instance, what they are telling us that if you can open a market for us in China, we can increase the capacity of this sector. We can actually double the capacity of this sector. If you can invest in phytosanitary regulations, and we just realize that actually don't have a proper phytosanitary regulation or regulator in this country, we can then start, to sell our products in the world market where we can compete with everybody else, because people will have trust in our products. So there you start to understand the binding constraints that are facing specific sectors. So that I was just giving you that as an example. Of course, going forward, we'll have to look at many other sectors that have been identified. We work together with the private sector to identify this binding constraint and agree on how to remove those binding constraints. I think that way you free up the productive forces that can help to create more growth into the economy. So one thing that we have also then done is to reorient our investment promotion strategy. Because before, we could talk to everybody. Now what we are saying is that these are the sectors that have got potential. If we are going to target an investor, these are the people that we are going to talk to. If you are already in Namibia, of course, yeah, that's good. That's good. You are here. We talk to you here already. If you are outside Namibia, we also then have developed a tool that identifies people or businesses that are in that sector. Who is in that sector? And especially those ones that are investing in Africa. Who are they? Where are they based? Yeah, and when you talk to them, you know where to find them. You go to them. You target them specifically, so that you target your investment promotion strategy, so that it's no longer general as it was in the past. So we have a very intelligent tool there that the investment promotion agency is actually using. So hopefully one day the investment promotion agency will make it available for all of you to see. But I think it's a tool that is really going to help them to be more targeted. So that is on the diversification front. Of course, we also want to support SMEs. You have heard us talking about SMEs. Ms. Muroro here has talked about the youth. Specifically, why we are interested in the SMEs is because we also believe that SMEs will also help to reduce unemployment, especially among the youth. If the youth can invest in the economy, can be supported to invest in the economy, I believe we are going to nurture smaller companies that will one day, grow into big businesses. One thing that we are doing in that space is we are rolling out what is called a code of good practices. And why we're doing that is that when we look at the ecosystem, why there is always an outcry of access to finance, we have identified 4 things. 1, market access. Namibia being a small country, market is always limited. But government is one of the biggest buyers in this country. So if it can support the SMEs and the youth, we could probably see some of those SME companies growing and become big businesses one day. So that's why we are rolling out the Code of Good Practices. It has been in the public space for consultations. I believe many of you may have commented on that. We are now busy wrapping it up. In fact, the law says we must lay it open for about 30 days. We have done more than 30 days just to allow enough time for people to comment on the Code of Good Practices. But we desperately want to roll it out because we believe that is also going to support the economy to recover if we can keep more money circulating in Namibia. Of course, not everything, but whatever we can produce here and whatever can go into our SME sector. Let this money circulate here. I think all of us are going to share in that income. I believe I have talked a lot, so I don't want to continue because I have already presented the budget statement, so the speaker is going to be very unhappy with me. So let me end there. And once again, thank Nedbank for inviting us. And I'm looking forward to a productive discussion. I believe there will be a panel discussion. So I will be happy to answer your questions. All I want to say is that I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. I believe Namibia is in an environment where we can make a difference now. Of course, it's still a very, very difficult environment because I see opportunities on the horizon. And we can only exploit these opportunities if we all work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honourable Minister. And that really, my first part of my official job this evening is almost done. We'll have dinner served, buffet style. You know, you're able to serve from either end. And maybe I should just announce a little bit of shall we call it house rules, but an orientation at the very least. Down the hall at the very end, we have ladies' restrooms, and to my extreme left, there are men's restrooms if you're in need. The ladies will also happily take your drinks orders. But for the next 30 minutes, shall we say, we'll have dinner right at that end of our Sky Garden, and then we'll reconvene for the panel discussion. We'll see you in a bit. Under the able leadership of the Presidential Economic Advisor, Mr. James Mnyupe.
Okay, I'll sit on this side. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for what promises to be a very interesting and exciting discussion about the budget. I'm not sure you can have any of those, but we're going to try and make it as interesting and as exciting for all of you guys as we can. So it's the first time I'm actually asked to moderate. Normally I am a panelist, so I must say I started getting very excited about giving all of the panelists trick questions and seeing how they squirm under these bright lights. But you know, I have to work with these guys at least for another 3 years. So at least some of them, so I can't misbehave too much. But Shivi was nice enough to give me a page of an introduction for the Minister of Finance. So I'll pick some highlights, because otherwise we'll be here for a very long time. But ladies and gentlemen, our Minister of Finance started working on studying the economy back in 1994 already at NEPRU. These are things I did not know. So I am definitely going to be holding these against him in one way or another. In 1999, he was modeling things at the forecasting division in the research department. He then went and joined the central bank in March 25th, 2010, and was subsequently appointed the Minister of Finance in March 2020. He holds a plethora of qualifications, from degrees in financial economics to postgraduate diplomas in economics from the University of London, and so it goes on and on and on. So, Honourable Minister, we're extremely proud and honoured to have you up here with us to field some of the questions, engaging questions that we'll get from the audience. Please, let's give him a hand of applause so that he doesn't feel shy to join us. Johan Nel is next on the chopping block. He started working in PwC in 2006. I think I started around the same time with him. He's still there, so if you want to know a little bit about loyalty. I suppose you want to talk to Johan instead of me. So while he has become part of the furniture at PwC, he's now a partner for tax there. And I must say, definitely one of those bright wins for PwC. Well done, Chantel and the team. Of course, he's a CA from an ICANN perspective and psycher as well. Johan, please come up here and tell us a little bit about some of the tax work you're doing. Chivi is definitely a lot more like me. He hasn't stayed in one place for more than 5 years, the last time I checked. So Chivi joined Nedbank in 2021, but he's a good friend of mine, and we've been exchanging clients all the way since back in the good asset management days. He has a master's in economics from New York, from the New York School, and a bachelor's of business from the University of Technology from Sydney, Australia. Definitely an ambassador's son, very, very illustrious. Yes, I mean, this makes all of us jealous. I went to UNAM. So that's cool. I hope New York was good. And then we've got Malcolm, our arch nemesis. First, as a fellow asset manager, we were always trying to catch up to 91. It wasn't always like that, but since Malcolm joined that team, we were always trying to chase him. So Malcolm joined, actually he was at Old Mutual before, that's right. So he's Johannes' protege. And then of course after that, he joined 91. He's doing a stonking job there. So he knows a little bit about loyalty as well. 6 years at Mutual, and now he's a senior fixed income portfolio manager at 91 and doing a good job. Malcolm is a CFA charter holder, and he just went to Cape Town. So none of that New York, Sydney stuff. So Malcolm, please join us. You're a true Namibian. So fantastic. And like any good moderator, I forgot my questions on the table. But the good news is Shivi did actually WhatsApp these to me. So I'll make sure I read the formal questions, even though I will spice them up as we definitely go along. So Shivi, we are your guests. So perhaps why don't you start talking to us a little bit about when you were doing all of your analysis, how do you think fiscal prudence was being reflected in the minister's speech? Oh, thanks. I was looking forward to making them up, but okay. Now I have the actual questions. Chivi, over to you. No, of course.
Okay, thank you very much, James. But before I talk about fiscal prudence, it's very important to talk about revenue, because a lot of the debate when it comes to fiscal prudence is simply on expenditure. But the question on the revenue side is, how can we grow the cake? How can we increase the cake? So coming out of a very difficult environment since 2016, with the economy contracting, obviously revenue has also come down a little bit. However, this year there has been a glimmer of light, and that glimmer of light, however, has been once off in the form of dividends from some of the diamond mining interests, and we see some of the diamond clients here. So job well done for dividends and royalties and so on. But also from the sale of MTC, that 2.5 billion as well, which really boosted the non-tax revenue. However, having said that, there's still an over-reliance on income tax as well as SACU revenue. And diversification is key. Nobody really talks about diversification until an event happens. Coming out of COVID-19, and our SACU revenues went down. Now everybody's starting to talk a little bit more about what else is it we can do to increase our revenue? How can we grow the economy? Because increasing revenue is a function of growing the economy. Over and above that, we also look at the different revenue streams. If one looks at the corporate side, corporate taxes, yes, we do pay good tax, the banks, the insurers, and so on, and the mining companies. Well, we hope so. However, the corporate tax contribution is actually the smallest that we've seen. And therefore, that begs the question, what kind of enabling environment or what kind of revenue collection methods do we have to try and increase corporate taxes? Ideally, you want corporates to pay, shouldn't say this, to pay more tax in totality, because as corporates are growing, they're creating more jobs, so on and so forth. Now, on the expenditure side, we also saw that the usual suspects were there in terms of the social sectors really receiving the lion's share of the budget, which is quite good, as well as the economic sectors. However, if one looks at expenditure, the fundamental challenge that we have been seeing for so many years now is the operational budget, which makes up the biggest portion of the expenditure budget. And if you drill down even further, the majority of that is actually on personnel. So the root cause, if one looks at it, or the challenge that needs to be addressed from a fiscal discipline perspective is on the operational budget, is on the personnel expenditure, but then the question is, how do you do that? It's not like the private sector where you can sit in head count committees and say we are going to target reduction of staff of X amount. I mean, just imagine government reducing the size of the NDF or the size of police. You can't do that. It will definitely be quite a challenge. And even if you look at nations that have put in austerity measures, that is really as a last-ditch attempt. So it is something that will be with us for some time, but there are encouraging signs, and I think some of those signs are more in terms of the policy looking forward. If we look at the establishment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, I think that is a step in the right direction, although the quantum is not a lot, only about 50 million, but it signals to the market that there is a greater emphasis on fiscal discipline. It signals to the market